Good afternoon, everyone. So again, welcome to today's Festival for Good Conversation. This is a series of topics that I think and we are curating to put spotlight on emerging issues in the social enterprise sector. So again, I'm Jierong, your moderator. We are focusing the objective of today's conversations about mental resilience amidst COVID-19, its impact on both the individuals and organizations, and specifically how we can overcome these issues and continue to thrive. So joining me today, we have three esteemed panelists. James from Emea Strategy, Antoinette from Safe Space, and Beyond from MiFi. So I really appreciate the three of you for really just taking time this weekend, amidst all your busy schedule, and to really help us shed more light on this somewhat taboo topic. So perhaps as a start, perhaps all the three of you could just share about yourself, your social enterprises, and your take on the mental health landscape in Singapore. Perhaps maybe we start with Beyond, then Antoinette, and then James. 5 minutes each. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks, Jerong. And hi, everyone, for joining this Festival for Good Conversations and to Race for actually organizing this as well. So I'm Beyond, and I'll just quickly go through my whole journey with mental health and well-being as well. I think there's two things that stand out in my journey, which is my own health scare back in 2010, and then my sabbatical in 2016, which actually triggered the start of MiFi, which is my current startup as well, which I founded back in 2016. So about 10 years ago, I would say that I was actually working in the US, and I was actually burning a lot of midnight oil, working with across 16 hours of time zone differences with my team here in Singapore, and yet balancing my team that's based there as well. So that gave me that was actually a very unbalanced period. I think before this, I spoke with a panelist as well about how we try to spend weekends to take our rests. But back then, I was, having zero balance. I was working pretty much 24/7. I was, not sleeping well, and I started experiencing problems with my own health, specifically my chest pains as well. I was getting all these short attacks, where my chest would seize up and I did not know what's going on. They increased in frequency. So I saw a doctor who actually told me that there was nothing wrong with my body. And then I learned a new word, right? And if you want to learn a new word today, you can learn this new word called psychosomatic, right? I learned that, when our mental health is out of balance, perhaps due to stress or something else, it can manifest in physical pains as well. And so that was where my chest pains came from. I never knew about that, right? So my doctor gave me two choices as a doctor, right? Because he gave me one choice as a non-doctor, as an individual. The first choice was to go see a psychiatrist in Woodbridge Hospital. And I heard Woodbridge and I was like, whoa, Woodbridge, no, I'm not crazy, right? And I think this is why we have this conversation today. And let's say, oh no, you've got to keep an open mind. You started trotting out my university education, and so on. You're an educated mind. You should know that mental health is not something that is just very taboo in Singapore. Maybe next you should go. There are other professionals in IMH as well, right? Which is what they call it. His second suggestion was to go see a clinical psychologist, which I actually did not warm up to that solution because I think it was just too much for me to take. I was expecting to see a cardiologist for my heart. But long story short, he took out his doctor hat and told me that, I should actually I should actually try to meditate because he does it himself and it was actually very helpful as a long-term solution. So I tried that. So fast forward to 2016, I was actually feeling quite burnt out from my job, and I took a 1-year sabbatical. During this 1-year sabbatical, I tried out various business ideas as well, but I decided to add this new criteria for what I was going to work on next, which was social impact. Right, I went through a few ideas, and eventually I went back to my experience in 2010 when I realized that mental health was severely neglected, right? Especially so in Asia, in Singapore especially, and I would love to expand people and society's awareness of what it is. So I started a company, and we started by focusing on developing a mindfulness mobile application, right? For just anyone who wants to learn by themselves. It's free to download, and then you can pay for a subscription, monthly or annual. Last year, we started focusing on corporate wellness for companies. So now we deliver webinars, we deliver analytics for the employers when their employees actually use our app to maintain their mental wellness. And so that's what I do. And I'm Bjorn, the founder and CEO of MyFi. So back to you, Tierong.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bjorn. What about you, Antoinette?
Okay, so thanks so much, Bjorn.
Yeah.
For me, I'm Antoinette, the co-founder of Safe Space, and my story is pretty similar to Bjorn, where Safe Space as a therapy platform came from a personal need. So for me, I went through a panic attack in the office. And I was looking for a therapist because by then, I've already been exposed to quite a few mental health solutions. And I think at that point in time, I just needed to talk to someone. I wanted someone to just help me get through that situation that I was facing. So the first thing I did was to go to any kind of search engine, which is like Google and all that. And I typed in psychologist Singapore ASAP. And I realized that the whole process of finding a therapist that was meant for you or the most suited for you, it was actually very daunting and it's not clear. So there's a whole list that Google will generate, for example, right? But how do you know who's free? How do you know this therapist is qualified? How do you know if they can see you right now? You still have to call each one by one to find out if they can take you now. And I still don't know if that person is the most suited for me. I had to go off trial and error. So that's where I realized that, that there's actually a gap in this sector. How can I actually simplify this process? Firstly, for myself, if this happened again, how could I simplify the whole process so that if anyone else also went through something similar, they have a solution that could simplify this whole process for them and they could seek help immediately. So that's how the whole idea of Safe Space came about. So what is Safe Space in a nutshell? We're pretty much a B2B2C digital mental health care provider. We really want to be a mental health ecosystem where, one, you have fast access to quality supply of therapists. We match you to your most suited therapist within seconds through a simple intake questionnaire. And instead of you waiting for 24 to 48 hours or even weeks sometimes for that therapist to be available, you can find your best match within seconds and you can make the decision from there. We are also able to provide mental health education. So we realize that not everyone needs to speak to a therapist right away. Sometimes you're just trying to figure out, okay, I'm really stressed right now, but at what point does healthy stress go into really unhealthy stress and you kind of need some coping strategies? So we've come up with assessments for mental health education, lots of webinars that our therapists who are experts in their own right. We work with them to create webinars, and we also work with corporates to tailor some of these webinars that's more suited to their organization. So we are launching the new platform actually in November as a private beta, but the whole public release will be in Jan 2021. So yeah, we're very excited, and thank you so much, Grace, for inviting us here to talk a little bit more about mental health.
Thank you, Antoinette. So it seems that for Bjorn and Antoinette, the reason why you set up a social enterprise, right, to delve more deeply into this space is because you both experienced personal issues with mental health. Is it the same for you, James, by any chance?
Hi everyone. Yes, Jerome. Interesting. I mean, it's really great to hear from Antoinette and also Bjorn. I mean, for me, it's the same thing as well. It actually came from a personal experience. So, usually people ask me, what do I do, who I am. So I basically, one of the funny ways I like to introduce myself is I always tell people, say I'm an expert at burning out. I've been having burnt out at least 5 times for various reasons. And this was really what happened to me 3 years ago. I was a social worker working in the social services, from graduation all the way to 2017, and I was working in a job that I really love. So people wouldn't think that you're burnout in something that you love, you have passion in, but it's still possible. I was really putting in long hours. I was handling projects after projects, helping charities to grow their volunteer programs. And then in 2017, something interesting happened, and so what happened is that 2 times in a month, I was actually admitted in hospital for pneumonia. And, I was breathless and all that. And that, as I was recovering from my second episode in that 1 month, one of my ex-colleagues told me jokingly, he says that, I think you're overworked. But even though he meant it, kind of like as a joke, half as a joke, it really set me thinking. And I decided, to actually want to, at that point in time, just like Bjorn, wanted to take time to, recover, And because I realized it was quite a challenge for me to continue, because it's like I'm, like what some people say, I'm running on an empty tank, right? And it's difficult. So I basically quit my job, and as I was kind of contemplating where to go, I realized that there isn't really much resources out there for people who are burning out. I mean, it's like most of us know, it's like, okay, if I'm stressed, okay, I know some of the things, like I need to take care of myself, balance work, but the question is how. So I decided to kind of like, okay, let me actually see what I can contribute to this space. So I started Emmaus, and one of its main projects, the main area of work is actually in the area of helping people build mental resilience. So basically also sharing what I've learned, from my own personal experience, as well as a practitioner, as a social worker as well. So kind of helping people to gain more awareness and build up their mental resilience, so that they don't break down. Yeah, so that's pretty much my story, and it's just been 3 years, quite an amazing experience so far.
Yeah, thank you, the three of you, for sharing your stories. Basically, you guys are categorized as basically persons who have recovered from mental health and managed to get out of depression, get out of burnout, and not only that, but actually set up your social enterprise to want to basically bring it forward, to help people who are perhaps in this space too, who may potentially experience burnout and depression. In fact, during this period, COVID-19, right, it's a period whereby it's been a strong. We know that COVID-19, right, has in a way showcased, I wouldn't say showcased, but make stuck some of these issues. In fact, prior to COVID-19, there has been a strong emphasis about maintaining work-life balance, device-free time, because the world has become more interconnected. And because of all these, but because of COVID-19, right, it's really made stuck everything. And it's brought this mental health issues to a whole new level, right? With some people trying to struggle to draw the line between what is home and what is work. Because like what we talked about earlier, prior to this, during the pre-panel discussion, we talk about people, or even me and my colleagues and people out there, whereby you have meetings, online meetings as back to back, and it's really no time to self-help, and it can be actually quite stressful at times. So my question to the three of you is that, can you share your view, your take on this issue, and how we as individuals could actually administer self-care, given how COVID-19 has caused the world to be so interconnected, how everyone is just trying to work back to back nonstop on video conferences. Yeah. So perhaps, James, you might want to start first. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Jerome. The interesting thing about this whole COVID-19 thing is that one of the things that I see actually coming out definitely is the spotlight on mental health. Because frankly speaking, when I was actually starting to do this area of work in 2017, right, it was quite difficult, because kind of like people know, they know mental health is important, but yet it's kind of like quite secondary in people's life and all that thing, right? But then with COVID-19, it really does put this in spotlight. And personally myself, I have been kind of like trying to also battle burnout and learn from it and help people to understand what burnout is and how to actually overcome it and even prevent it. And I thought I kind of like, I'm on top of my game until the circuit breaker happened, where my whole world changed, and I was really, it's like what they say, the rubber hits the road. When the rubber hits the road, right? I realized that I had to really also adapt and adjust. I realized that I was also affected, frankly speaking, even during that time with all the stress and all that, with my kids home-based learning, having two energetic young boys running around and having to do my work and not knowing, what's the next project going to come with project cancellation. So I think definitely, it's a period where everybody is kind of like starting from from point zero again, learning about it. But definitely, I think if we were to say something that positive came out, is that I think people begin to really pay attention to their mental health. And, definitely some of the things in administering self-care, in my chats with friends and also in the webinars that I do, I think definitely a very healthy boundaries is really important for me. So for example, for me, right, one of the things that I intentionally do, because for me, it's very easy for me to face burnout in two areas. One is my work burnout, and one is as a parent, right? Because if you think about it, Mondays to Fridays, I'm at work. Saturdays and Sundays, supposed to be rest days, but no, I'm actually on my full-time job as a father. So it's literally round the clock. You know, you don't really have time to rest. So boundaries are very important. So ever since a few months ago, I very intentionally took, for me, I took a day off. So I actually told myself and my team, no work on Mondays. Everybody rest, right? Don't arrange any meetings, nothing. Okay, just rest. And so that's something that I do. Another thing that I really I did and I found very helpful is, you know, for me, it's also like, how do you actually arrange your day? You know, my days used to be quite chaotic, you know, but the thing about, I've learned something called what they say, the most important task, or the MIT. Last time I used to tackle about 10 items on my to-do list every day. But now working from home, right, I tell myself I need to fight the battle with new strategy. And so I kind of look at what are the top 3 tasks that I'll do that day. And that's it. You know, I won't stress myself out with all the other things that are left undone. And I very intentionally also arranged not more than 3 meetings in a day, because it can be very draining. So I think it's really being very intentional in really taking charge of your day, because frankly speaking, I think sometimes that's how I think we can kind of gain some control back.
Yeah. Thank you, James. Yeah, I mean, I can totally relate to you when it comes to the circuit breaker. I myself am a father, right? And during that period whereby my kid couldn't go to preschool, I had to take care of him and balance work and everything. That I think I could say that it was quite stressful. Yeah, it was actually quite stressful. I mean, how about you, Bjorn? I mean, any views on this?
I think I want to build on James' car racing analogy just now, where he said that he realized that burnout was almost like running on an empty tank. During a circuit breaker, I think it's almost like we were running at F1 racing cars the entire time, right? But we forgot to take pit stops. So I want to stress on the importance of actually, you know, learning to when to take a pit stop and planning it within your calendar as well. I'm glad to hear that Jiro and some of your team members as well, you all block out time on your calendar to actually
That's
take
what I'm
breaks.
encouraging everyone to do.
Yes, because I do the same thing as well. I started doing this in my previous job about 5-6 years ago. Because we actually back then we used to take Wednesday mornings off, no meetings, right? So that we at least would not take meetings within our own team and allow ourselves to do our own work. We still might end up having external meetings, but the entire thing here is that when we start work, what we don't learn from school is how to manage our calendars. And it means that we do not know how to manage time, because the moment you join a new company, your calendar is a wide open space. If people see a slot, they're going to book it. But why do we need to actually, you know, let everybody else dictate our times? You know, I'm not saying that, you know, you should go and book your entire time and say that you're unavailable for meetings. But I think it's important that we learn to actually build in some buffer, build a pit stop within our own time period as well, right? So let's say, for example, you have starting a day with 3 meetings, right? You need to eat. So maybe you should just block out an hour for you to eat, maybe rest, have a pit stop before you actually start off your car racing thing again. We talk about a circuit breaker. In some way, this is a circuit breaker itself, right? In the true sense of the word. Because, you know, your electricity is flowing, right? Your brain is firing on all cylinders. You are going from meeting to meeting and so on. But then, you know, like you're wearing yourself out. We need to learn how to build in such a circuit breaker within our calendars, within our own daily schedules as well. So during the circuit breaker, I would say that, you know, for the first week, I was amazed by my productivity. You know, I was like, wow, this is great. I could literally just, you know, like get off the bed and pretty much nearly, you know, start working. And then when you do that for like a few days, you realize that, okay, you know, actually this is not healthy at all. Some people even never leave their beds as well. You know, they start taking calls on their own beds, and, you know, like it becomes, you know, unsustainable. So I started taking, you know, like breaks where, I mean, I live in an apartment block, so I would actually just go out for 15 minutes and climb the stairs, right? So I've got 15 floors. I climb it. I climb up, right, because it's better on the knees. I don't climb down. I take the lift down. So I'll climb 60 floors. or within 15 minutes, and I would just sweat it out because I realized I was overworking my brain so much. I was not moving. My step tracker told me that I wasn't moving at all, so I needed to do that, right? This also relates a lot to our energy cycles because our energy, it's going up and down based on our own circadian rhythm. So whether you're a morning person or whether you're a night owl, we should also learn when to actually spend our time doing our most valuable work, like what James mentioned for the MIT. If you find that you're a night owl, you might want to, allocate that time for more creative work that you need your brain energy on and not spend it all on meetings. Meetings are important, but the most creative and the most productive part of your brain, whether it's the morning or the evening, should be meeting free so that you can spend time as what they call a maker, right? You make and create things over there. And so I think that was very important. And lastly is, one thing I do a lot more was during these micro breaks was really just taking mindful breaks. When I'm climbing, all I think about is the steps, the fatigue on my legs. I'm counting down like 5 more floors to climb out, 4, 3. I just really connected that whole experience because in some way, when I meditate and when my trainers teach meditation or mindfulness as well, let's just use a digital metaphor over here. When we sit down, you are swamped with all sorts of thoughts. Meditation is to help our mind reach the state of inbox zero. Because you see, right, we are all very familiar with emails. We get swamped with emails, asking for Zoom meetings, calls, responses, and so on. But our mind never really knows how to reach inbox zero, and that's where we need to actually have that.
Yeah, we can talk about. Yeah. Thank you, Bjorn. We can talk about prevention for in my subsequent questions. I'll get back to you on that definitely. I think there's a question from the floor relating to that. But meanwhile, Antoinette, do you have any views on this too before we move on?
Sure. So just to share, we've been doing a lot of corporate workshops, and the number one requested topic is preventing pandemic burnout. I think we did at least 5 in the last 3 weeks alone. So it's definitely a very hot topic. And Bjorn and James have raised very amazing points where the cause of this is really lack of structure when it comes to working from home, and also having a lot of distractions. I want to raise 2 solutions which haven't been touched on yet, which will definitely be very beneficial to the community out here, is, create your own social group, a group that you can turn to that can actually empower you and inspire you to keep going. Because with working from home, you're also isolated. You are connected online to thousands, but in reality, sometimes you're also feeling really isolated. And having a social group that you can either connect virtually or connect on the weekends, it actually helps to recharge you because it's of the community aspect of it. So that's one, to really create your social group, and to also, take time to enjoy and reward yourself because we're all working really hard. And by rewarding yourself with small goals and maybe small rewards to begin with, it really can motivate you to get tougher. And it helps to create the energy boost to keep you going throughout the week. So I would definitely say all these points are amazing, but also try and include a social group for yourself and set aside some time for rewards.
Okay, thank you, Antoinette. Maybe at this juncture, I just want to take one question from the floor. I thought it's quite related to what you guys have been talking. How do we know what is beyond normal stress, and then we need to seek help? When do we know what's beyond normal stress? Yeah, that's any one of you can answer.
So basically, right, a very easy way of understanding this is burnout actually basically is stress on overdrive. And what I usually tell people is stress is not all that bad because, people sometimes think of stress, it's very negative, right? But if you think about it, some people are more creative, under stressful situations. In fact, there's actually such a term, stress, which is actually good stress. And you need stress to basically be able to, like, for example, in a threatening situation, right, it actually moves your body. So, but how do we know when it becomes unhealthy? And I think, for Bjorn and Antoinette, and even myself, right, we've actually described some symptoms, to look out for. And if you kind of looked at the symptoms of burnout, they will include things, for example, where they will affect your functioning. For example, in one very classic example is someone actually with burnout actually said that she could actually stare at an email for an hour and could not even type a simple reply. So you realize that, you couldn't even do things that maybe you actually could very easily do, in the past, or things that would it would be very easy for a normal person to do, but you struggle with that. Or even things like cynicism, where you're really very critical of people, you're very easily agitated, or even, your body showing you signs like you're breaking down, falling sick more often, not eating well, not sleeping well. I think where it actually starts to affect your functioning and even like withdrawing from people. That's, I think, where it's kind of like the warning signs, where the kind of alarm bells are ringing and say, oh, something is not working right here. Yeah. And so that, beyond?
Sure. I mean, I guess when we do the workshops, we really try and explain, like, what is the real definition of stress, workplace stress, and then what is burnout. And exactly your point, James, identifying what are the internal factors that can contribute to burnout and what are the external factors that contribute to burnout. And how do you spot the signs? So, for example, what is stress, right? Just think of stress as an uncomfortable cognitive state, and it's resulting from a stressor. And as I mentioned, it's really a complex relationship between personal factors and external factors. So when you look at workplace stress, whether it's working from home or in the office itself, it's basically a really poor match between what your job needs from you and what are the capabilities and resources that you have available to complete your job requirement. So that's pretty much the definition of workplace stress. But then what is burnout? What then counts as burnout? So it's exactly what James said. It really is the employee's attitude and the behavior has completely changed, but changed in a negative way in response to job stress. And it's exactly like what James said, where things that you used to do, you don't do well anymore. So I can give an example of my intern previously in a couple of jobs ago. This intern was a fresh grad. And when she first joined, she was very chatty, full of life, couldn't wait to be in the industry. 6 months down, her whole demeanor changed. Things that she used to enjoy doing, which was going downstairs and get a bubble tea and stuff like that, she absolutely did not want to do anymore. She wore a hoodie, she closed it up, and she just wanted to get on with her work. And we actually had to do some research ourselves to understand what's going on with this person. And by spotting the signs, had we known, we would have asked her, what, take a day off. You need to rest. You are going through the signs of burnout. And now that we know the situation, which is why all these corporate workshops are very important for HR managers, even other employees to know, if you can spot the signs of someone going through burnout, you really can help that person overcome it and have the strategies in place. So
okay.
That's my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Antoinette. Maybe let me move on to the next question now. I talked earlier about technology as an enabler, and as an enabler, I mean, when it comes to all these Zoom meetings back to back, but so in a way, it is really a double-edged sword. But for the better, right? I mean, both MindFi and Safe Space, you guys have built technological solutions, right, to try to address some of these gaps in this mental health space. Maybe you can share with me more about it, especially maybe beyond from your side. You really look at the upstream part of it, the prevention. Whereas for Antoinette, you look at perhaps the whole suite of services. Maybe you can share with me more about this.
I think when I first started MindFi, the first thing I realized was that technology is the problem, but is avoiding the problem the only solution, right? Because I took on a bit of what I call a Trojan horse approach. That to solve this problem, you got to break it from within, right? And so there is this very amazing TED talk, by this ex-Googler called Tristan Harris, about time well spent. How can we spend our time better on digital devices, right? And how can we make it more humane? Because I don't think we are actually going to take on, anti-technology, Luddite kind of way. We cannot run away from technology in our work, in our lifestyle, because there are a lot of pros, even though that, it is prone to addiction. So we need to learn to kind of find that balance. And what we have done is to, inside our product, in our thinking, is that we try to make that technology more humane. How can we get people to be more aware of how much screen time they are spending, right? This is what the phone makers, across the Google, Android universe, across Apple is doing. How can we supplement and build additional tools to help people gain more control, right? So whether it's in the form of our in-app meditation exercises, our focus timer, which helps people restore their screen time control and build out the digital well-being, we try to find ways to make sure that our products complement your lifestyle, make you more aware of your own habits. So then everyone is free to manage how much time they want to spend, get reminders if they are exceeding it, and they have easy tools they can access on their phones, right? So this is working with the problem to find a solution, more of a Trojan horse approach rather than just saying, hey, no tech. And that's just my take on it.
Got it.
Antoinette? Yeah.
Sure. So for me, I never looked at technology as the problem, and primarily because of my previous industry that I was in. The gaps that we were trying to solve was one, access. And the first point of contact that someone would have is to go to their laptop and search online. So one, how do you solve access? How do you solve affordability? And by being on an online platform, it helps us to actually solve a few areas on our side. So COVID happened, circuit breaker and lockdown happened. Everyone was forced to go online. The fact that we had to go online actually continued to allow therapists to continue their practice because they had to adopt digital tools. So that also helped to maintain their jobs as well. Two, because it is online, the prices has also been reduced. So for people who previously couldn't afford therapy, they were actually able to afford the slightly cheaper options that being online provided. So for us, when we were doing Safe Space and coming up with the user flow of how we wanted it to look like, we had all these thoughts in mind. And there are, when it comes to therapy, there are many telemedicine platforms already out there. What really sets us apart is that we wanted it to be more than just a directory listing. We wanted it to be more like a personal concierge for the individual, where someone is guiding you and helping you get access to discreet and affordable therapy services. So we feel that technology, when it comes to mental health, think of it as technology for peace of mind. There is a way for it to work hand in hand together with mental health.
Okay, thanks, Antoinette. Since we are on this note on technology, I have one question from the floor. Regarding technology, it's quite an interesting question. Where do you see the center of gravity heading with regards to developing resilience in the young? How can we harness this point or points of influence to drive resilience in a society raised on efficiency, speed, and convenience through technology?
Okay, no, this is a great question.
Yeah.
So I guess I could probably share a little bit more about why building mental resilience is really important. We're always going to be facing hurdles like this. COVID was one of them, and to be honest, there will be more in life, and depending what your situation is. By building mental resilience for yourself, you are able to overcome it, and probably overcome it faster than how you have dealt with it before. So I would definitely say there are a lot of platforms out there that are providing strategies and education, free education as well, on how you could boost your mental resilience. Take a look at all the free resources that are out there. And on our side, we have 2 therapists that have come together to create a course on how to build mental resilience with growth mindset. We have actually worked with the government to make it 90% government subsidized so that the community and employers can have access to it. So if anyone would love to have access to an online course, it's self-paced, you can learn at your own time. Let us know. We're more than happy to share more information with you about an education system like that.
Beyond any views?
Well, I felt that James should go first. I'll keep my answer short because he's the resilience person, right?
Okay.
Resilience is, and correct me if I'm wrong, James, resilience is about ability to bounce back. You fall and we bounce back. I think that's a very important skill among youths today. My previous startup about 10 years ago that I was running was actually for kids, preschoolers. And I was always very aware that the pediatricians, the American Association of Pediatricians, actually recommend screen time of no more than 1 hour back then. I think they increased it recently to 2 hours, right? But yet, I think we are live in a society whereby that can be very hard to actually maintain. I'm not a parent myself yet, but when I look at my nephew as well, it's actually very difficult to imagine how you can babysit them without a device. I think it starts from there, because I think these habits really start from young, and we will need a multilateral approach. I don't have the answers, but I think across from the family unit, from parents to the school, with teachers, to society, among their peers as well. I think the peers is actually probably the most important aspect that we need to do to build resilience, right? That's more and more I'm beginning to see that media education needs to happen. We need to find more engaging ways to help people understand the value of this engagement. Again, it's almost like that Trojan horse approach that I say, but where they are, I love this quote: we skate to where the puck is. I think it's an ice hockey, not that I'm a fan of ice hockey analogy, right? But if everybody's online and we think that they're spending too much time, they're getting addicted, we need to find ways for more engaging ways, so that on that medium, we educate them there is another way. There is another way to disengage, so that they learn, that they are facing issues, and they may fall. You don't have to look good on every IG picture, you look great and, be judged on every single picture. You need to learn how, if you get judged, how do you recover from that, right? I think we just have to find a multilateral solution for that. But over to you, James.
Thanks, Bjorn. I really like how you actually brought out about resilience, because I think one of the misconceptions that most people have about mental resilience is that you are strong, you are unformidable, you won't be actually taken down. But yes, actually resilience is really about being able to bounce back, right? It doesn't mean say you have no trials, no challenges, but are you able to bounce back from there? And where I see this whole thing going on is that, and I do see, and there have been research that that has actually shown it. NUHS, the National University Health System, right, actually had a study done in August, and they actually says that the youth are actually more anxious, and they are less resilient as compared, of course, to for example, to the retirees. And this kind of mirror because what happened is that in April and May, right, we developed a COVID-19 stress quiz that is free to take. And what we actually allow people to do is to answer a series of questions, and they kind of give you your scores in 5 domains of stress, namely digital, relational, physiological, psychological, and vocational. And the thing is that it's interesting to find out that one of the at-risk groups are actually the youth. And of course there are other groups like those with who have experienced mental health and physical health conditions before COVID-19. But it does shows that, and I think this, whether is it the little small scale study that we done in April and May, or the NUHS one, which is much larger scale, it does goes to show that. Now, how do I see this going? I think it's actually positive, because if you think about it, right, during my time when I entered the workforce, right, nothing much is being talked about mental resilience. In fact, I like the word mental resilience. I very intentional nowadays. I said talk about mental resilience rather than just mental well-being, because it's really talking about building that tenacity, building the ability to bounce back. And I think with all these talk that is going on, right, with all this spotlight, right, it kind of opens up bit by bit the talk about this thing about mental resilience at the workplace. I mean, in the past, frankly speaking, when I actually, talk to people about mental resilience, I mean, most companies say, okay, yeah, it's a good topic to have, but then maybe we still want to go to maybe how do you do a proper diet, those kind of things. It's not really important, like one of the top priorities. But the thing is that I think one of the good things about it is that it actually helps people to start talking about it, to make it to make them aware that this is something that really needs to be addressed. And I think it helps the young people who are stepping or already stepped into the workforce or stepping into the workforce, because I think people will be more open to talk about this. Yeah. So I think it's good to actually keep this conversation going, because I think it's a healthy conversation. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, James. Well, now that you talk about the workplace, right, I shall now delve into some questions relating to workplace. Slightly more taboo subject. In fact, this is also this question that I wanted to pose to you folks, right? It's also something that the floor has actually asked. So you know that the mental health of staff has generally been a rather taboo subject amongst employers, HR personnel, HR people, even today. And COVID-19 again has brought this to the forefront. So through your work with corporates, have you seen any mindset change in this area? That's my first question. My second question is, do you think it is the employer's responsibility to step in to build their employees' mental resilience? Yeah, whose responsibility should it be, right? Should it be the employee, the individual, or should it be the employer? So who wants to take these two questions?
Okay, I can take it.
Sure, Internet.
So after going through it myself as well, and being an employer in a startup as well, I really think it should be both. But I think the conversation should be from the HR manager or from the founder of the organization, because once it's a top-down conversation, it's a topic that's taboo, yes, but it will definitely make it more approachable with open communication for the employees to seek advice on how they can cope with it. And the managers who look after the employees as well could probably form a way or a checklist to work with the employee to get over this current situation that they're facing. So I would definitely say it has to be both, but the ownership of how to communicate should be from the HR manager or from the CEO or any C-level individual.
I can go next. My answer is a bit more nuanced. I think there is a significant difference we see over the past year. I would say from Q2 onwards, which is when we had a circuit breaker and the outbreak across the world. We deal with a lot of global and local organizations, even from our base here in Singapore. So I work with my fair amount of local organizations from NUHS, IMH, our DBSs, to global companies like, Deutsche Bank and so on and so forth, right? So the difference is very big. I think local organizations tend to be slightly behind in terms of adopting mental health and talking about it and running programs. But they are beginning to have companies who do a lot. For example, DBS, their CEO meditates. And so that is something that actually gives their organization members, their staff, the courage to actually admit that, oh, okay, well, my leader acknowledges it. We need more leaders like that locally, right? In overseas organizations, especially for those who are based in the West as well, there's a lot of role models, right? Bill Gates, Oprah, Arianna Huffington, you have a lot of top-down approval already. And so, people are willing to talk about that. So I agree, Antoinette, we need that kind of top-down approach to actually give comfort, psychological safety for employees to also resonate and say, what I do is acceptable. It's just a fact of workplace culture that you need your boss to kind of like give in and say, hey, this is endorsed. But another point I'd like to make is that, back to your point, Jerong, what makes a good culture, what do we see right now in this pandemic era as well, is that to have a good culture, like I go back to this quote that I really love as well. People do not leave companies, people leave managers. People leave managers, which actually implies a more bottom-up approach towards responsibility. Because I think, in an organization, you don't work as a whole. You have 100, 1,000, 10,000 people. You don't work as a block, one unit. You have multiple teams, 3 people, 5 people, 10 people. You'll have micro cultures within a very large organization. It will be different from a small team to another team as well, which really puts the onus here on the managers. Right, the middle managers are actually very critical because they determine who you interact with day to day, who you report to. You wake up and who do you think of? Who do you have nightmares about, right? So that's why I think my answer to the second part of the question is that I think we need to look at how we can support team collaboration. How can we support team members and team managers to build bonds better? I think the answer to that is teams from the bottom up, not individuals, but from a workplace context, it will be teams. Love to hear what you have to say too, James.
Thanks. So yeah, I think definitely to the first question, there is definitely more interest, in mental well-being programs and all that. I do see people inquiring more, especially, during the circuit breaker where most people are working from home and companies are like struggling and says, okay, what can I do? Some companies would come to me and says that my people are stressed up. What can we do with them? Some will come more from the angle, it's like, how do I engage them? It's like, I don't know what's happening to them, and the other end, it's like, I don't hear from them. But nonetheless, there's interest in this area. Now, with regards to, the question about whose responsibility is it, I do agree, and I think with everyone down here, that it's actually both, because I think traditionally we always think about if you burn out, right? I don't know about you, but I used to hold on to the fact that if you burn out means to say you are at fault. There's something that you're not doing right. Why is it all your other colleagues are not burning out, but why are you burning out? And people used to think that, used to think that, okay, if I burn out means there's something not right about me. But I've always challenged this fact, ever since started on this journey of doing mental resilience. And I always tell people, say that you can be the most resilient person, but if I put you in a very toxic work environment, you will still burn out. So it kind of takes both hands to clap, right? And so in kind of like what are the kind of strategies and approach we can take? Just like Beyond said, we can take both the top-down and bottom-up approach, both at the same time simultaneously. Because I've seen top-down approach where it also falls flat on its face. It's a good starting point that the leaders talk about it. Some leaders are even authentic to say that but if the ground they're not ready and they're not really talking about it, right, then it's just going to just be a top management talk, But same thing, if you come from the bottom and the top is not supporting, it's difficult. So one classic example, I'm currently working with a community health institution. And, long before COVID-19, about late last year, they actually they came to me, and this is very encouraging. They told me, that they actually want to build their mental resilience of all their staff, because they realize one of the things about it is that most of them may have employee assistance program, right? But they realize that employee assistance program, there's still a lot of stigma and people don't really utilize it. So they want to actually start going in there, and one of the first steps is actually to build that culture of having the needed conversation, to tell people, to say that it is, I think if I'm not wrong, there is a K-drama that goes, it's okay not to be okay, right? Currently. So it's okay to not be okay. And, and one of the things that we do is that very intentionally I go in and we actually create opportunity for people to talk about it, and not just talk about it. We actually give people the practical handles as an individual, as well as a team. Like Bjorn mentioned, as a team, what can you do to support one another? So I really do think that it's really both sides. You need to take, unfortunately, you need to take both a bottoms up and a top down approach. Having that happening concurrently, and not just one side, but very importantly, is also the ground. Whether the ground is ready to talk about this, because it's a very taboo subject. And people always think, if I'm not wrong, IMH in about 5 years ago, they did a study, and 5 in 10 people actually feel that when you have mental health condition, it's actually a sign of personal weakness. So we need to actually beat that kind of mentality, because I always tell people, say, I've been through burnout, I've been through depression, but here I am. It doesn't mean to say once you get depression or burnout or anxiety or anything like that, you're lesser of a human. In fact, you can come out stronger, and you can be on a journey to help other people. So yeah, that's really what I think, about whose responsibility it should be.
Okay. So, thank you for your take on this rather taboo subject. I hope in the audience out there, there are hopefully HR practitioners out there who will maybe think of a way how you could incorporate some of these potential views into your HR, into our HR practices. Noting that it's both a top-down and bottoms up. Yeah. Oh, I just realized that we have 5 more minutes. Okay, since we have 5 more minutes, how about this? I'll try to take a look. Let me see, what questions do we have? I really tried to incorporate some of the questions from the floor right into our panel discussion. Let me see, is there anything else that we would like to talk about? Okay, I have this very broad question from the floor. What are the key areas for growth and opportunities in the mental health space that you see in the next decade? Yeah. Just to talk about the here and now, let's talk about the next 5 years. Just 1-2 minutes from each of you. Yeah.
Okay, I think for me, and this is just my personal opinion, I think we'll definitely see a lot more government support and a lot of grown-up initiatives coming up. I think COVID-19 has spearheaded a lot of the conversations and the realization that a lot of work is needed in this space. I would definitely say as an industry, it is still in infancy, even though the doctors and all that have been working in the mental health industry for a while.
Mhm.
Coming from the technology space, mental health tech, this is super new. And it's even more new in Asia, where a lot more work and a lot more research to back it with evidence and to ensure that the cybersecurity is done well around it. I think this is a very new space and we'll definitely see a lot more support from the government as well as grown-up initiatives.
Okay. Bjorn?
I think, I echo what Antoinette is saying. They're saying that the industry is actually very new because if you're an outsider, you think that mental health is just one block. But when you delve deeper, you understand the big difference between anything from prevention, preclinical to clinical tools as well, right? I think there will be a lot of interest in the HR tech space for measurement because I think the industry itself has a lot of measurement tools for employee engagement, pulse surveys, and so on and so forth, where they take the pulse and understand how employees are reacting to the current stressors that they face in daily life. Someone as recent as a few months ago, the Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella talks about burnout. We don't even know how to measure burnout. How do we even know how to deal with it? So I think first thing is awareness. We need to know how to measure and track. Then I think after that it comes engagement. What are the best ways to engage, right? We are all constantly, even in this room, in the broader landscape as well, businesses are trying to find out how can we engage, right? We have all these new tools, all this science, but it now has to be reflected on a new reality, right? A vaccine may come, but I think workplaces have changed. They no longer need to be confined to the bounds of a physical workspace. Workspace is now, digital as well. What does that mean for team dynamics? What does this mean for personal routines? I think there's a lot of ways for product innovation and service innovation as well in this space on exploring this new business reality.
James?
Yeah. Well, definitely if there are one thing that I really hope to see, in terms of the growth opportunity is definitely in the area of building of more of resilience, especially of the younger people, because researchers have kind of studied burnout. Since we're talking about burnout here, right? It's in the workplace or even burnout as a parent, as a caregiver. Burnout actually share very similar symptoms as depression. They're kind of like they are very similar symptoms. Now they're not the same thing, but they share very similar symptoms. So they kind of like saying that if actually burnout is allowed to run its course, it could actually become depression. Of course, I think more research needs to be done in this area, but I think this actually provides us with very good opportunity to really start having this conversation and really even building our people. Because I always talk about how, I did a few projects with institutes of higher learning. And, we always talk about making our people workplace ready, right? But what about being resilient? And what about actually helping them to actually grow their resilience as well, their mental resilience? And I think that's really equally important because we live in such a world, we don't know. Today it's COVID-19. We don't really know what's going to happen, in the near future, in 1 year, in 5 years. Will COVID-19 continue? Will there be other diseases, that will cause a lockdown again? And I think it's definitely a lesson that we need to learn and take away with us and start to review how do we actually move ahead more sustainably. So, in terms of investing in the younger people, investing in our workplaces, I believe that a lot of companies will also start going for more flexible work arrangement. That itself, it's good for certain people, in helping them to manage their work-life harmony. But it could also be very stressful for some people, if, for example, they don't know how to draw, like very beginning, we talk about drawing the right boundaries, right? So I think definitely there's area opportunity in growing that area as well. Yeah, thanks, Jiro.
Okay, thank you so much, James. And yeah, thank you for all my three panelists. Thank you for really participating in this conversation on mental wellness, mental resilience. I think we have come to the end of this conversation. I think I'm right on time. So thank you so much once again. Thank you everyone for listening in, and over to you, Sunin.
Thank you, panelists, for the candid sharing of your personal experience. Personally, I've taken away a lot of things, and I hope the audience, you have taken away some key things that you can do to maintain your mental wellness or even improve your resilience. Thank you for joining us today. If you wish to connect with any of the panelists, we are sending out their LinkedIn on the chat right now, so you can reach out to them. Like mentioned, do keep some time for yourself. Today is the weekend. You may now go on to enjoy your weekend, and before you log off, perhaps you can check our festival website at festivalforgood.sg to reward yourself by purchasing from the social enterprises. Last but not least, do join us for our next conversation happening next Thursday at 12 p.m. on Consume with Purpose towards zero food waste. Thank you and have a good restful weekend.